All right, let's just jump right into this explainer. Today, we're trying to untangle the incredibly complex, fast-moving, and honestly pretty baffling facts surrounding the abduction of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie. Now, if you've been following the news lately, you know this case has totally gripped the nation. But the sheer amount of information and misinformation flying around, it's a lot. It's overwhelming. So our goal today is to cut right through that noise. We're going to focus strictly on the verified facts, the timelines, and breaking down those conflicting reports so we can actually make sense of this massive, unfolding mystery.
But look, before we get deep into timelines and IP addresses and all that, we really need to remember that the stakes here are incredibly high and deeply human. This entire investigation is basically anchored by this heartbreaking plea from Today Show co-host Savannah Guthrie regarding her missing mother. Sitting right there at her news desk, holding a tissue, she reminded the whole world that behind all these sensational headlines is a family in absolute agony. They literally just want their mom back.
So what exactly are we dealing with? Well, it's a deeply distressing scenario that honestly reads almost like a Hollywood thriller, but tragically, it is very real. We've got a vulnerable 84-year-old woman who lived alone, we have these exorbitant ransom demands involving cryptocurrency, and maybe the most confusing part for us trying to follow along at home, a completely chaotic media landscape where major news outlets are reporting vastly different stories from supposedly inside sources.
Okay, Section 1. The night Nancy vanished. To even begin to understand the current confusion, we have to start at the very beginning and ground ourselves in the verified facts of that night at her Tucson, Arizona home.
Let's look at this timeline because it really illustrates a terrifying, rapid sequence of events in the early hours of February 1st. According to investigators, Nancy was dropped off at her house after dinner by a family member right at 9:48 p.m. Everything seemed totally normal. But then, the digital footprint gets incredibly sinister. At 1:47 a.m., her doorbell camera is completely disconnected. Boom, offline. At 2:12 a.m., movement is actually detected, but because there wasn't an active subscription, no video was saved. I mean, what are the odds? And then, at 2:28 a.m., Nancy's pacemaker app disconnects from her phone. Her family didn't even realize she was missing to call 911 until noon the next day when she didn't show up for church. That leaves us with this massive, terrifying blank space right in the middle of the night.
Now, when investigators finally arrived on the scene, they found a chilling setup left behind, and this immediately shifted the whole thing from a routine missing persons search to a suspected kidnapping. The FBI released footage showing a masked stranger right outside the front door, along with super clear signs of forced entry. And absolutely the most disturbing part, authorities confirmed that blood found on the home's front porch was a direct DNA match to Nancy.
Moving right along to Section 2, the ransom demands, because just a day later, this already awful situation took a significantly darker turn with some direct extortion.
1. Single. Bitcoin. That was the demand. According to TMZ and some local Tucson stations, an email got sent to their tip lines demanding a ransom of 1 Bitcoin for any information on Nancy's whereabouts. And to put the pressure on, they gave a strict deadline, basically claiming that time is of the essence. But you know what makes this initial note so incredibly chilling? The specificity of it. This wasn't some generic "we have her" demand. According to CBS News sources, the note was addressed directly to Savannah Guthrie, and it contained these hyper-specific details that really only someone physically inside that house could possibly know. Things like an Apple Watch with a white band being left on the bedroom floor, or the fact that the back porch light was broken. That level of detail, that's exactly why authorities and the Guthrie family themselves initially believed, hey, this note absolutely has to be authentic. All right. Section 3, conflicting reports emerge. On February 6th, a second note reportedly surfaces. And guys, this is exactly where the media narrative severely fractures into wildly conflicting accounts.
So let's actually compare these reports from two major networks side by side. On one hand, you've got CBS News. They're citing investigators who believe the abductors sent this second note, basically expressing remorse, claiming Nancy died, that it was a complete accident, they didn't mean to do it, and they were, quote, sorry. But then, flip the script. You have TMZ. They are insisting their source, the original emailer, never actually said she was dead. Instead, TMZ is reporting that follow-up emails claim Nancy was taken to Mexico, that the kidnappers needed the money to go underground to avoid retribution, and chillingly stated that, actually, time is no longer of the essence.
So with major outlets getting completely contradictory messages from supposed kidnappers, we really have to hit pause and ask, are these notes actually real? Is this a genuine extortion attempt by the people who took Nancy? Or Is it just a cruel, super elaborate hoax meant to torment the family and waste the FBI's time? It's worth noting here, investigators pointed out that both notes actually appear to have been sent from the exact same computer IP address, which just thickens the plot.
Okay, Section 4. Expert skepticism. Let's look at the analytical breakdown from law enforcement professionals who are watching this media circus from the outside.
Retired FBI agent John Young really hit the nail on the head here regarding the psychology of the crime. Speaking to local news in Arizona, he pointed out something crucial. Perpetrators of heinous, violent crimes like kidnapping an 84-year-old woman in the middle of the night, they rarely, if ever, extend condolences. The whole idea of an abductor writing in to say, hey, we're truly sorry it was an accident, like CBS reported, that raises massive red flags for veteran investigators. It literally defies the typical nature of this type of crime.
And then, adding a whole new layer of weirdness to this, we have TMZ's interactions with federal authorities. So TMZ claims they'd been in touch with the FBI since they got that very first note. They actually offered to just pay the one Bitcoin ransom themselves to see where the digital trail led, thinking it could help trace the suspect's location. According to TMZ, the FBI initially said, interesting idea, but then they completely ghosted them. TMZ tried reaching out like half a dozen times. Crickets, nothing back. Why on earth would the FBI suddenly go dark on a potentially active lead like that? It is a massive, lingering question mark in this whole investigation.
Finally, Section 5. A family's plea. Look, regardless of whether these notes are some sick scam or the actual abductors, we need to take a step back. At the heart of this explainer is a real family in desperate pain, just waiting by the phone.
Creating a pretty stark contrast to the extortionists' murky crypto demands, the Guthrie family took matters into their own hands. They put up a massive, straightforward $1 million reward for anyone who can provide information that helps bring Nancy home. That's $1 million in addition to the substantial reward the FBI is already offering.
Savannah has used her huge public platform to speak directly to the kidnappers. The desperation is just palpable. She made it crystal clear. The family is ready to talk, and they are absolutely willing to pay. But they have one non-negotiable requirement before they move forward. They desperately need proof of life. They have to know Nancy is actually still out there. And that leaves us with a really haunting final thought. We've got a timeline that goes ice cold in the middle of the night. We've got an IP address sending conflicting, bizarre narratives to the media, and we have a family offering $1 million just for some answers. So, amidst all the media noise and the agonizing silence from the actual abductors, what is it going to take to finally uncover the truth? Which of these fragmented puzzle pieces will actually be the key to bringing Nancy Guthrie home? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep your eyes on the facts and never ever stop questioning what you read.